power-tripping cop thought he could make a name for himself by brutalizing a quiet teenager. He never imagined the boy's father was Jason Statham, and that a lesson in pain was coming for him. The Friday night air in the Market District was electric, a vibrant hum of life that Leo Statham loved. Neon signs from trendy bars and old-school diners painted the pavement in strokes of crimson and sapphire. Laughter spilled from open doorways, mixing with the tantalizing aroma of garlic, wood-fired pizza, and roasted herbs from Vesuvios. The stylish Italian eatery, with its exposed brick walls and warm Edison bulbs, was the perfect spot to decompress after a long week of college classes. Leo, at 19, possessed his father's calm intensity, but wore it with a youthful ease. He leaned against the cool brick exterior of Vesuvios, his friends flanking him. He adjusted the collar on his sleek bomber jacket, a quiet smile playing on his lips as he scrolled through his phone. They had just finished a fantastic meal, and now they were just soaking in the energy of the city, waiting for their ride. "I'll text my dad when I get home," Leo mentioned offhandedly, his voice low and steady. "You know how he gets." His friends nodded, understanding. Having a world-famous action star for a father came with its own unique set of parental concerns. The smooth rhythm of the night was suddenly sliced apart by the low growl of an engine. A black and white police cruiser crawled up to the curb, moving with the predatory slowness of a shark inspecting its territory. Diners on the patio barely glanced up, accustomed to the presence of law enforcement in the busy district. But this felt different. The car didn't pass. It stopped, its engine idling menacingly, its headlights pinning Leo and his friends in a harsh, interrogative glare. The driver's door swung open with a heavy groan, and Officer Rex Miller emerged. He was a man built like a cinder block, thick-necked, with a chest that strained the buttons of his uniform and arms that spoke of undisciplined weightlifting. A stale scent of cheap coffee and an unpleasant air of self-importance radiated from him. His eyes, small and hard, swept over the teenagers with immediate disdain. Miller was infamous in the district, a bully with a badge who preyed on easy targets to feel powerful. Well, his voice boomed, a gravelly sound that cut through the chatter. "What do we have here?" "A little gang meeting, blocking a public sidewalk." Leo straightened up, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the officer's aggression. "We're just waiting for our ride, officer. We just ate here." He gestured politely toward Vesuvios. Miller took a heavy step forward, his boots crunching on the pavement. He ignored Leo's friends and locked his gaze on him. "You got a smart mouth on you, kid." The officer's sneer was a deliberate provocation. "Officer," he mimicked, drawing the word out with mocking respect. He closed the distance, invading Leo's personal space. The air crackled with tension. "And who are you supposed to be?" "Leo," he replied, his voice even, refusing to be intimidated. "Leo what?" Miller's smile was all teeth, devoid of any warmth. He was fishing, looking for weakness. Leo Statham. The name hung in the air for a second. Miller's expression shifted, the fake smile twisting into something genuinely malicious. "Statham," he repeated slowly, savoring the name like a piece of rotten fruit. "You don't mean Jason Statham, do you? That bald-headed tough guy from the movies?" Leo's friends exchanged nervous glances. A muscle in Leo's jaw tightened. "He's my father." That, Miller chuckled, a harsh, ugly sound, was the wrong answer. He took another step, now looming directly over Leo. "Oh, this is Rich, Jason Statham's kid. I figured that washed-up fossil was too busy polishing his head to have a family. Guess he's still lurking around, huh?" "Don't talk about my dad like that," Leo snapped, the words escaping before he could stop them. It wasn't defiance. It was instinct, the primal need to defend his father's honor. The laughter vanished from Miller's face, replaced by a cold fury. He was no longer performing for the public. This was personal. "You think you can talk back to me?" he hissed, his breath a foul mix of coffee and nicotine. "I don't care who your daddy is. Out here, you answer to me." One of Leo's friends, seeing things escalate, tried to intervene. "Sir, we're not doing anything wrong. We could just go." Miller didn't even look at him. He shoved the friend back with a powerful forearm, sending him stumbling into the wall. The other friend caught him as Miller refocused on Leo, his eyes burning with rage. Leo held his ground, his heart pounding against his ribs, but his face remained a mask of controlled calm. "We'll leave," Leo said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "We're not looking for trouble." "Too late," Miller sneered. "Trouble's already here." Then, with a speed that defied his bulky frame, his boot came up. The movement was a blur of black leather and brutal intent. The impact was sickening. The steel toe of his boot smashed into Leo's face with a wet, cracking sound that echoed off the restaurant's windows. Leo's head snapped violently to the side. He crumpled to the concrete, the side of his face scraping against the rough curb. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then chaos erupted. A woman at Vesuvio's entrance screamed, a piercing sound of horror. "Oh my God, he kicked him. He kicked that boy in the face." Diners flooded out onto the sidewalk, a wave of shock and outrage. Phones were already raised, their small red recording lights blinking in the dark like a dozen angry eyes. The scene was instantly being broadcast, a viral moment born from an act of savage cruelty. Leo's world was a dizzying explosion of white-hot pain. Every nerve in his face screamed in agony. The coppery taste of blood filled his mouth, thick and warm. He groaned, trying to push himself up, but his arms trembled and gave way. Blood poured from his nose and a deep gash on his cheek, staining the front of his jacket a dark, glistening red. Officer Miller stood over him, chest heaving, not with exertion, but with the perverse satisfaction of dominance. He glared at the growing crowd, daring anyone to challenge him. "Back off. This is official police business," he bellowed, his voice laced with the false authority of a tyrant. Leo's friends knelt beside him, their faces pale with panic. "Leo, stay down, man. Don't move." His vision was blurry, swimming in and out of focus, but one thought cut through the pain with absolute clarity. "Call him. Call Dad." His hand, slippery with his own blood, fumbled for his phone. He dragged it from his pocket, his thumb smearing a crimson streak across the screen as he desperately swiped to his contacts. He found the one number he needed, the one that meant safety, the one that meant justice. The line rang once, twice. Then a deep, familiar voice answered, calm and collected. "Lau." The tone sharpened instantly at the sound of his son's ragged breath. "Lau, what's wrong?" Leo coughed, spitting blood onto the pavement. His voice was a broken, urgent whisper. "Dad, Vesuvio's a cop. He kicked me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. It wasn't a moment of hesitation, but the chilling silence of a storm gathering its strength. Then, Jason Statham's voice came back, stripped of all warmth, colder and harder than forged steel. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." The line went dead. Leo closed his eyes, clutching the phone to his chest, his bleeding cheek pressed against the cold, gritty concrete. He believed him. He was coming. Miller saw the phone in Leo's hand, and his face contorted with rage. He stomped down hard, the screen shattering under his boot. "Trying to call your daddy to save you, huh?" He spat on the ground next to Leo's head. "Well, let him come. He's about to find out real fast whose city this is." But as the crowd murmured and filmed, as Leo's blood stained the sidewalk, a palpable sense of anticipation settled over them. They didn't know how, but they knew what was about to happen. Jason Statham was on his way, and Officer Rex Miller was about to learn that some fathers aren't just men. They are forces of nature. The crowd outside Vesuvio's had doubled, a sea of silent witnesses held captive by the unfolding drama. They stood in tense clusters, their phones forming a digital barricade around the scene. At the center of it all was Leo, bleeding on the ground, and Officer Miller, who stood beside his cruiser with his arms folded, basking in the fear he had created. He was a king in a kingdom of one, utterly oblivious to the reckoning that was speeding towards him. A low, guttural rumble cut through the hushed whispers of the crowd. It was a sound of pure, refined power. A sleek, black Audi RS Q8 glided into view, its metallic paint absorbing the neon lights like a black hole. It moved with an unnerving silence, its headlights slicing through the crowd and pinning Miller in their glare. The chatter stopped. The air grew heavy. Everyone felt the shift in gravity. They didn't need to see the driver to know who it was. The Audi rolled to a perfect, silent stop. The driver's door opened, and Jason Statham stepped out. The night itself seemed to bend around his presence. He was 60, but he moved with the lethal grace of a panther. He didn't rush or stomp. His stride was calm, deliberate, each step landing with the weight of absolute authority. His tailored overcoat hung perfectly on his frame, a dark silhouette against the city lights. His eyes, the color of cold steel, immediately found the sight that made his blood run like ice water. His son, his only son, sprawled on the sidewalk, his face a swollen mess of blood and bruises. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't acknowledge the dozens of phones pointed at him. His entire world, his entire focus, was fixed on one man, Rex Miller. The officer's smug grin faltered as recognition hit him like a physical blow. A nerve twitched in his jaw. He puffed out his chest in a pathetic attempt to reassert his dominance. Well, he barked, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle and hollow. If it isn't the transporter himself, what did you do? Race down here for one of your movie sets. You think your tough guy act means anything in the real world? Statham's voice was low, a controlled rumble that seemed to vibrate in the very air. You touched my soul. The words landed like individual hammer blows. The crowd collectively shivered. Miller tried to hide his growing unease behind a wall of bluster. Touched him? The kid had a smart mouth. He needed to be taught a lesson in respect. He jerked his chin towards Leo, who was whimpering as he tried to sit up. Maybe now he'll think twice before throwing his daddy's name around. Statham's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing. He moved past Miller, as if he were a piece of furniture, and crouched beside his son. His large, calloused hand gently brushed the hair from Leo's forehead, his touch surprisingly tender. I'm here, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper only Leo could hear. You're safe now. Leo choked back a sob, tears mixing with the blood on his face. Dad, he kicked me. Statham's eyes hardened, a volcanic fury now barely contained beneath a thin layer of control. He rose to his full height, turning to face Miller. The officer, feeling his authority slip away, fumbled for his baton. What are you gonna do, old man? Miller sneered, brandishing the baton. Chop me in half with your magic hands? Go ahead, give the people a show. But Statham didn't rush. He stepped forward, his boots making a heavy, deliberate sound on the pavement. Each step seemed to compress the air, making it harder to breathe. The crowd instinctively backed away, forming a perfect circle around the two men. You lay a hand on me, Statham, Miller warned, his voice cracking slightly, and it's assault on an officer. I'll bury you so deep in legal fees your great-grandchildren will be paying them off. Statham tilted his head, the faintest flicker of something that might have been amusement in his eyes. You stop being an officer the moment you put your boot on my son. Tonight, you're just a bully who picked the wrong family. Miller's face reddened with fury. Last chance, old man. Walk away before I put you on the ground next to him. The world shrank to the space between them. Statham took one final step, closing the distance. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the dead silence like a razor blade. You won't be putting anyone on the ground. Ever again. The officer swung first. The air outside Vesuvio's crackled as Officer Rex Miller swung his baton. It cut a black arc through the neon glow, aimed directly at Jason Statham's head. It was a wild, desperate swing from a man whose confidence was rapidly crumbling. For Statham, it was an invitation. He didn't dodge. He didn't block. He moved inside the swing. His hand shot up, not to catch the baton, but to intercept Miller's wrist. The sound of bone and sinew meeting in a movable object was a dull, sickening thud. The crowd gasped. For a frozen second, the scene was a tableau. The baton held motionless in midair, Miller's face contorted in a mask of pain and disbelief, and Statham, unmoving, his grip like a vice. Big mistake, Statham murmured, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. With a brutal, efficient twist, he wrenched the baton from Miller's now useless hand. The officer cried out as the weapon clattered to the pavement. Before Miller could even register the loss of his weapon, Statham's elbow drove into his ribs with the force of a piston. The air exploded from Miller's lungs in a choked gasp. He doubled over, wheezing. The crowd erupted. A mixture of screams and cheers filled the night as dozens of phones tracked the brutal, unfolding justice. Miller staggered back, his face a canvas of fury and pain. He threw a clumsy, wild punch. Statham sidestepped it with fluid ease, as if swatting away a fly. His open palm cracked across Miller's jaw with the sound of a whip. The officer's head snapped sideways, and he stumbled into the hood of his own cruiser, the impact leaving a deep dent in the metal. "You hit my son in the face," Statham growled, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. His movements were a blur of controlled violence. He grabbed the front of Miller's uniform, slamming him back against the car. "Now you're going to feel what that means." Miller roared in frustration and charged like a wounded bull. Statham met him halfway. A knee slammed into the officer's stomach, folding him in half. A precise hammer fist to the back of his neck sent him sprawling face first onto the gritty asphalt. The crowd gasped again. The sight of a uniformed officer, bloody and humiliated, scrambling on the ground, was a powerful, unforgettable image. Coughing and spitting blood, Miller dragged himself up. His lip was split, one eye already swelling shut. In a final act of desperation, he reached for his sidearm. The crowd screamed in terror as he drew the weapon, his hand trembling. But Statham was faster. In a blur of motion, his hand clamped down on the gun, twisting it with practiced ease from Miller's grip. With a single, fluid movement, he ejected the magazine, letting it fall to the ground. He then tossed the useless firearm onto the roof of Vesuvio's, where it landed with a distant clatter. He shoved Miller back against the cruiser, pinning him there, helpless and gasping. The officer's bravado finally shattered, replaced by raw, primal fear. "Please," he rasped, his voice a pathetic whimper. Don't kill me." Statham leaned in close, his face inches from Miller's, his voice low and sharp as broken glass. "Killing you would be an easy way out. This is a lesson." He picked up the fallen baton, not as a weapon, but as a symbol. "You wanted to show my son what power is. You wanted to make him bleed to feel strong." Statham's words thundered in the silence. "This is power, the kind that protects, not prays. The kind you will never understand." He dropped the baton. It clattered loudly on the pavement. He released his grip, letting Miller slide down the side of the car into a pathetic heap on the ground. The officer knelt there, coughing, his body trembling uncontrollably. Statham stepped back, his eyes cold as a winter sea. "Now you kneel," he commanded, "and you apologize to my son." Miller's shattered pride fought a losing battle. The eyes of the city were on him, recording his disgrace. Slowly, shamefully, he dropped to both knees. He turned his bruised face towards Leo, who was now standing, supported by his friends. I'm sorry," Miller choked out, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Leo, his own face swollen and bruised, stared down at the broken man. Tears welled in his eyes, not of pain, but of overwhelming relief and vindication. His father had not just saved him. He had restored his dignity. A wave of applause erupted from the crowd, a thunderous release of tension and a celebration of justice served. People shouted Statham's name, while others hurled insults at the kneeling, disgraced officer. In that moment, on a blood-stained sidewalk outside an Italian restaurant, a legend was not just remembered, but reborn. Jason Statham turned away from the wreckage of Rex Miller's career and walked back to his son. The cold fury in his eyes melted away, replaced by a deep paternal concern. He placed a steadying arm around Leo's shoulders, his touch gentle. "Let's go home," he said softly. Together, father and son walked back towards the black Audi, the crowd parting for them like the sea before a king. They left Officer Rex Miller kneeling in the dirt, humiliated before the entire city, his authority shattered into a million pieces by a father's love and a lifetime of discipline. The videos went viral before Statham and Leo even made a home. Hashtags like #StathamJustice and #CopGetsLesson trended worldwide. The footage was undeniable, raw, and powerful. The police department had no choice but to issue a statement announcing Officer Miller's immediate suspension pending a full investigation, though everyone knew his career was over. He had become a national symbol of police brutality, brought down not by a committee or a court, but by the very man he had tried to belittle. The incident sparked a larger conversation online about the abuse of power and the line between law and tyranny. But for most, it was simpler than that. It was a story about a father protecting his son. It was a visceral reminder that true strength isn't found in a badge or a weapon, but in the unwavering will to defend the ones you love. It was a lesson taught not in a movie, but in real life, under the harsh glow of neon lights and the watchful eyes of 100 cell phone cameras. The world saw a movie star that night, but Leo saw something more. He saw his dad. This story is a fictional dramatization. All acts of violence are wrong, but what this story highlights is the primal instinct of a parent to protect their child. What are your thoughts on where the line is drawn? Comment with respect, share this story if it moved you, and subscribe for more content that makes you think.